was like a game changer. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well, and that with the psychosis is really interesting too, because as you know, and I've shared kind of on my separate podcast, like I just had a very small tidbit of what that might have, felt like for 24 to 48 hours or whatever in the hospital on pain medications and a lot of pain and hearing voices, right? And I do not have that clairaudient, and I know that because that was a different experience than, I had it a couple times in kind of that liminal space just before going to bed, like just before sleep, where I'd heard a couple things and I'm like, oh yeah, that's hearing, that's the clairaudient. It's not the same as my kind of clairsentient or what, just kind of knowing or feeling the answer like I typically get. And that's an interesting point, because I wonder if I dip my toes for a quick second into the land of higher selves. Like there was, I heard multiple different voices, multiple different, talking. Is it possible, do you think, like if we can tap into our higher self, to tap into that radio wave of everybody else's higher self by accident?
oh yeah, I know that it is, for sure,
Yeah.
because like I was flooded with all of that when I was transmuting the collective karma. You know what I mean? I could hear
Right.
massive
Yeah.
thoughts that did not belong to me. I could hear what they were working
Right.
on. I could hear what the future held for them. I could hear like,
Yeah.
so like
It felt like
songs that were being, well, but songs that were being written that were going to hit
wow.
mainstream media like a year or two later, I was hearing them. So yeah, and I believe that that's because I was, communed with all of these higher selves. You touched on something when you were talking about with it was the pancreatitis that, brought
Yeah.
all that on, right? I don't want to
Yes.
misinform our public.
Hmm.
So you were talking about that just now, and it made me think about like, that could have very well been our higher selves doing that,
Hmm.
because
Right.
it took me to, and this keeps coming up, is my shamanic journey, where the shaman, the very first image that she had as she was, performing the ritual and whatnot, was me dragging my own body through the street with my head split open. So like I split my own head open with
Wow.
psychosis. You know what I mean? Like to
Right.
heal from the Stockholm syndrome and to heal, and do the
Yeah.
psychological warfare. So that very well could have all been my higher self coming at me from a million, I don't know why a million different light years away wants to say, like, but like a million different light ways. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because,
I'm
you
sure
know,
light is involved, and that's why
yeah,
you're
oh, no
drawn to say
doubt.
that. But yeah, for
No
sure. So I
doubt.
think what it was trying to say there was different light and different time aspects, because you have the
Hmm.
years in there too. So yeah, I agree, and I think it. The part for me, like I didn't hear song lyrics and things like that. I guess I wasn't there, too long to to get too much of the interesting stuff. But I was hearing like medical jargon and things that like there's no way, like of course I'm in a hospital, but it was like I was standing next to
You're
this
hearing
person
all
and
the
they were
thoughts of
full
the
on
people
talking
around
about,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and I was hearing things that there's just no way that my brain could come up with, because I just, as much Grey's Anatomy as I've watched in my life, I just didn't have that information in my head.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like I think you can step into that space. That's an interesting one to look at, because that's a scary space when you don't have full control over it, and when you're not sure, whose voices you're hearing. It's like, it's one thing when it's your higher self and it's like, okay, I can deal with this, but when there's voices coming from all over the place, and you got through that, like you transmuted that, you worked through it. If anyone else is having that kind of issue, do you have advice for them in that situation?
You do not have multiple personality disorder. In the beginning, I was like, I have multiple personality disorder. That's what this is. Like, it's like I'm just flucked. You know what I mean? Like I'm so screwed.
Yeah.
And they just kept like they're like it, and it felt wrong when I would say
Hmm.
it. You know what I mean? Like, how you can say something in empowerment and it's like, okay, that feels right, and it just felt wrong the whole time I was saying it. So I
Right.
knew that it didn't fit. And then same with schizophrenia. Like I didn't have schizophrenia. Um, Psychological warfare is very much a thing. I didn't look, I looked up Kundalini so many times in my awakening, and it was very fruitful. But it wasn't until after I like came out of the psychosis and stuff like that that someone else in AOD had introduced me to a dark Kundalini.
Mm.
I don't think there's a difference. I really don't.
Right.
I think it just
When I read
depends.
about it, I feel that way too. And I feel like it also doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. But I mean, what can? Because there's always different things for different person, but people. But
Exactly.
yeah, it feels like there's a lot of darkness there. And I was just thinking before that, like, ooh, we really stepped into the dark side of the higher self here, which I don't think we planned. But you're right. Like, it really does lead back to that. Is like there's light and darkness with everything, right?
Well, and I think that if anybody is struggling with something like that, look up what a dark Kundalini is. Understand that in my personal experience, that there is no difference between a dark Kundalini and a light Kundalini. I think it's just a Kundalini. I think it's just the intensity of your experience,
Right. And what you need,
and what
to propel you
well,
from
and
that point, right?
what you signed up for too. Like for me,
Yeah,
part of that
yeah.
was transmuting the collective's karma.